welcome to this new video for my channel, The Mental Traveler. I'm Caro Herrera, and today I'm going to be reviewing Share of Summer, which is MMK's autobiography. Mary Margaret Kaye is among my top 3 favorite female authors, and I reread every year 2 of her historical novels, The Far Pavilions and Shadow of the Moon, because they are among my top 5 favorite books ever. Share of Summer is composed of 3 volumes. The first has the gorgeous title of The Sun in the Morning, published in 1990. The second one is called Golden Afternoon, and it came out in 1988. And the last one is Enchanted Evening, dating back to the year 2000, less than 4 years before Kaye passed away at the age of 95. Before I begin my review though, let me just say that this will be a video with spoilers, so if you haven't read them, beware. Ever since I can remember, I love history, so it didn't surprise me that when I first became a bibliophile during my early teens, my favorite sort of books were either sweeping family sagas spanning decades, or romantic historical fictions, or stories of English people living in the British colonies during the 19th and 20th century. Still, it wasn't until my early 20s that I discovered MMK and her works. I've already reviewed The Far Pavilions and Shadow of the Moon in other videos. So yeah, to make a long story short, for years I've been rereading The Far Pavilions and Shadow of the Moon because I really love them. The Far Pavilions is my 4th favorite book ever, and Shadow of the Moon is my 5th favorite book ever. But to my great surprise, it wasn't until February 2019 that I got around to reading MMK's autobiography. What shocks me about this though is the fact that I didn't even know that there was an autobiography out there before this, and I'm such a huge fan of her, I could kick myself with frustration at my lack of research. But anyways, the moment I learned that there was a biography out there, I quickly looked it up, bought it, and devoured it. As you can probably tell by the fact that Share of Summer is an autobiography, this is the story of MMK. I love the title because it makes me think that this woman found such joy in living that for her, the fact that she was alive was always a thrilling adventure. Share of Summer spans around 100 years, from about 1850 to 1950, because Kaye tells us who her grandparents and parents were before she's even born, and then we follow her through her childhood in India, her teenage years growing up at a boarding school in England, and her subsequent travels as a young woman all over the place. Plus all the men she was romantically linked to, how she became an author, but overall, Share of Summer is also a beautifully crafted time machine that takes us back to a time and place, the likes of which the world will never see again. I give Share of Summer a 5 out of 5 stars review. I absolutely loved it, I recommend it, but I want to go into more detail with each separate volume as to why they're just so good. The Sun in the Morning. This is the first part and it turned out to be my favorite one, and it was a joy, though not a surprise, to discover that right from the very first sentences, Kaye's prose was so beautiful, like the sound of tinkling water in a silver fountain. It soothed me and I felt as if I was listening to it as I reclined on silk cushions at a sunny yet cool courtyard made of marble in some eastern palace. Maybe this is in part because I feel like Share of Summer is MMK's love letter to India, country where she was born and where she spent so much of her life in, and the place where she set some of her works as well. This is her ode to that land, because even though the British Raj ended a while ago, this was such a detailed account of that time period that I feel that it is because of recorded stories like Share of Summer that such a magical time will never be forgotten, even if it will no longer happen again. In a way, it filled me with the same sentiments that my favorite books evoke in me. Anyways, Share of Summer is a glimpse to a mellow, exciting period that is long lost and never to be reclaimed. But getting back to The Sun in the Morning, you can really feel Kaye's love for India through the colorful tapestry of woven words that she creates with this literary work. There is no doubt in my mind that MMK and I are kindred spirits for a dozen different reasons. For example, we don't care to include politics of our lifetimes, preferring politics only if it comes into the form of history. We're both storytellers as children, and we don't like mathematics. Also, she recalls seeing the Titanic before it set sail, and I love the tragic, bittersweet story of that famous ship. Plus, the author's father once danced with Queen Mary of Teck, who is one of my favorite Queen consorts ever, seeing as I am a royalist. Anyways, regarding the first volume of Kaye's autobiography, I really enjoyed the fact that not only did it remind me of The Flame Trees of Thika, which is also about an English girl growing up in a colony of the British Empire, although in this case it's set in Kenya, but that it revealed from where had the author taken inspiration to write certain scenes in Shadow of the Moon and in The Far Pavilions. For example, her father inspired some scenes, and some were changed from one of these novels and moved to the other one. Kaye was also born in India like this book's protagonists, and she behaved like them at some beats. They all even felt when their elders sent them to boarding school in England that living in India was like going into exile, and they longed for years for the day when they might be allowed to return to it. I also had no idea that Kaye had lived for so many years in India, and I am no longer surprised that she knew it so well. It was also great to learn that when she was an old lady, she got to travel back to this country that she loved so much in order to watch the 80s production of her book, the TV series of the Far Pavilions. Golden Afternoon is the second volume in Share of Summer, and in here we see Kaye finally returning to India, the land where she was born after being sent to England for boarding school. India, the land that would forever hold her heart. But this will be a very different India to the one she remembered as a child. Now that Kaye is grown up, she will be able to attend to parties, have beaux, and we see her as she starts to earn money as a painter, which only makes me want to buy the Far Pavilions picture book even more, seeing as she made the illustrations in it, and I want to know how exactly did she envision her story's settings. Anyways, it was also a delight to discover that when we both became young women, we kept on sharing some traits. For example, we both speak too fast and too much. We both don't like insects, and we both read Out of Africa, about English people living in a colony of the British Empire around the same time, except that in this occasion, instead of India, it's Kenya. Overall, Golden Afternoon is also an enchanting volume, and I admire MMK's ability to recall so much half a century after something happened, and making the reader feel like he or she understands that this is because some memories are so precious that you not only never forget them, but you also feel like they happened only yesterday. Still, I believe that what I liked most about it was that I, as a young woman, was reading and relating to things that had happened to Kaye when she had also been a young woman. Enchanted Evening, the third and final volume of Share of Summer. This book begins when Kaye and her family moved to China, and it's exciting to see this much beloved family in a new setting. The author comes into her own as she leaves childhood behind her because of some things that happened to her, and we see this by the choices she makes, proving that she was wise beyond her years in many matters. Again, Kaye has such a way with words, and she paints with them such vivid descriptions of the past that I could almost feel my heart racing as I closed my eyes and imagined myself stepping into whatever place she was telling us about. This book stops when Kaye finds the love of her life when she is around 30. The author lived well into her 90s. I do wish that she could have gone on writing other volumes covering the subsequent decades of her life, particularly because it was such a fascinating one, not only just up to her 30s. She traveled all over the world, living in different countries, and she became a successful author. I understand, though, that not only did she have health issues around the time this book was released, preventing her from writing more, if that might have been her intention, but she might have also wanted to keep her private life private, to protect her husband and daughters and grandchildren. In any case, I can only conclude that MMK is now not only one of my favorite authors, but also one of my role models. I admire her as a woman, I am captivated by her life, I can relate to her. But yes, anyways, I can only conclude that MMK is not only among my 3 top female authors now, but she's also a role model. I admire her as a woman, I am captivated by her life, I can relate to her in so many ways and levels, and I have a feeling that even if I live to be 100, her stories will always have a special place in my heart, along with this wonderful person that created them. Also, once more, some of the things from Enchanted Evening that convinced me that MMK was a kindred spirit are that she also moved her hands a lot when she was expressing herself. She liked to use synonyms and when writing, just as I do. She worked for the radio, and I also worked at a radio station for more than a year. She met Somerset Maugham, an author whose works I like, particularly The Painted Veil, which is about English people living in the colonies of the British Empire, in this case China. And it's nice to know that these writers met. And finally, Kaye wrote that once, when she was in London, she visited this cellar where a lot of famous people had signed their names. She mentions that she saw Nicholas II's signature, and that this struck her because Nicholas and his family were murdered in a cellar later on. Since Nicholas, who was the last Tsar of Russia, is one of my favorite monarchs ever, this irony of fate chilled me to the bone. Anyway, since I have already reread this year Shadow of the Moon and the Far Pavilions, I can't wait to venture into these stories again next year. But now I am also looking forward to these because I will do so knowing thoroughly well who their author was and identifying what scenes were inspired by life events the author's lives, and what lay behind the inspirations to make her write certain scenes in her beautiful and enthralling novels. But yes, anyways, for the moment I believe that this is all I have to say about Share of Summer. Thank you very much for watching my review of it. I hope that you enjoyed it. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that you did. Please let me know if you liked my video or not, as well as what are your own thoughts about MMK's life and her works, because I would love to talk about this great, amazing woman with you all. In the description box below, you can find a link to Goodreads page for Share of Summer for each of the 3 separate volumes, as well as a link to my review for the Far Pavilions and my review for Shadow of the Moon. But yes, I'm Caro Herrera, the Mental Traveler, and I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you're in the world. I'll be seeing you soon. Goodbye.